And this war is not only about oil, because the US regime, and specifically neocons, Cuban Americans like Marco Rubio, see Venezuela as the engine of a kind of regional project that threatens US hegemony and US control in the Western Hemisphere, really underlines the intellectual bankruptcy of this entire Monroeist policy, because it's delusional.
Trump's thirst for regime change in Venezuela is more than just about the oil. That's what Max Blumenthal here is telling Judge Napolitano. And really, it goes beyond even the desire to secure regional hegemony in South America. There's more to this than meets the eye, and it's not exactly being covered by the legacy media. So let's see what Max has to say about it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
What is the true reason, as you understand it, that Donald Trump has targeted speedboats in the Caribbean and amassed an armada, a naval armada off the coast of Venezuela?
Well, I think Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro were always eager for negotiations with Donald Trump. There were negotiations, basically renew Chevron's license, and Venezuela will work with Trump on accepting as many migrant flights as possible. And that's gone. That was the track of Rick Grenell. He was someone who could have been Secretary of State, but he was superseded by Marco Rubio, who represents what I call the Gusano industrial complex of South Florida, specifically Doral. And these are a few districts which the GIC, the Gusano industrial complex of Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans, and now a large number of right-wing Nicaraguans, uses to hold the Republican Party in particular hostage, because they need to win these districts. So for Trump, this was about domestic politics, and he finds himself in a situation where he has committed something like 15 to 20% of the US Navy and its assets, which cost a lot to run every day, to the Caribbean, and fallen into to Rubio's trap.
Yeah, exactly right. He's committed at least one carrier group to this region and to this quest for regional domination and regime change in Venezuela. And this is not the first time, by the way. If you remember, if you watch the first Trump administration play out, the Trump administration tried to dislodge and conduct a regime change operation within the country by declaring Maduro's most recent election illegitimate and trying to insert Juan Guaido, with the Trump administration giving Guaido something like $53 million. That was heavily reported on at the time and supported, of course, by people like Pompeo. And you had Tulsi Gabbard ripping into the Trump administration for this. So this has been a long time, desire among the neocons, the right-wing neocons like Marco Rubio, who Trump elevated to Secretary of State,
which is to launch this phony drug war as cover for a regime change war that I'm not sure Donald Trump actually wants to wage. But now Trump is in a situation where he has to save face. So how will he save face? Will he launch the war that Rubio and Elliott Abrams have called for, with special forces in teams attacking Venezuelan bases after a massive air assault all across Venezuela? Will he just announce that he's killed 100 drug dealers and stopped the poisoning of the U.S. and call it a day? I don't think so. Will he wage symbolic strikes, as Bill Clinton did, these pinpoint strikes in Iraq, kind of a wag the dog scenario? That's also likely. But Donald Trump has to save face now, because he has fallen for the trap, which is intended to trigger a regime change war. And we can talk about this more, but you'll have the Pentagon brass on Capitol Hill today testifying about the criminality of these strikes, and Pete Hegseth ordering U.S. soldiers to commit war crimes. And this has really thrown a wrench into the gears of the war machine, and slowed down the decision and complicated the decision-making process. But the whole war is contingent for those who've devised the policy on the complete removal of the Bolivarian government of Venezuela and the destruction of Venezuela as an independent sovereign country.
Yeah, totally agree with Max. I think there's many things about this beyond, say, the oil, the regional hegemony. It really is about global alliance structures because Venezuela is not a full member of BRICS, but it has applied for BRICS membership, and Brazil is a member of BRICS. So the United States does not want to see a second South American country, particularly one sitting on a lot of oil reserves, join the BRICS alliance, just like China and Russia and India has been driven into their arms, more so by Trump's punitive tariffs, the secondary tariffs he placed on India because India dared to trade with Russia when that was a unique opportunity to extract India from the BRICS alliance because Trump was close with Modi. So it really is about global hegemony more than regional hegemony in some respects. And I agree with Max. In some ways, the neocons are luring this into a potential regime change in the same way they tried to do so in Iran. And I don't think we've heard the end of that conflict either in Iran, with more saber rattling, clamoring, and propaganda in that direction, because they put Iran in a position where Iran could have had a reprisal against U.S. forces, could have killed U.S. forces, killed Israelis. There were some that were killed in Israel over their strikes, the ballistic missiles, by doing the same in Venezuela. If Venezuela was able to, feel that they were backed into a corner and enter into reprisal strikes that do kill American forces, that would be the casus belli propaganda for utter regime change in Venezuela. That's what they're trying to set up. That's what Rubio has always tried to set up.
To what end? I mean, other than to justify the military buildup there and to put Mrs. Machado, an agent of the Mossad and CIA and MI6, an asset of the Mossad, CIA, and MI6 there. If President Maduro has offered favorable terms on all that oil, well, what is Trump thinking? I got to justify what I did. I'm going to kill human beings to justify what I did. American pilots are going to come home in body bags to justify what I did.
Douglas Farah, who is a intelligence operative who has worked for think tanks like the Institute for National Security Studies, as well as the Washington Post, where he sort of posed as a reporter, was for years a major regime change advocate vis-a-vis Venezuela. And he war-gamed U.S. attack on Venezuela in 2019 and determined that it would be a catastrophe and would lead to conflict with no end. Essentially, what the U.S. unleashed in Colombia when it began to destabilize the country in its fight against communism in the 1950s, a kind of civil war with deepening narco cartel penetration and a new wave of migration to the north, which would be disastrous for the U.S. and for the continent. And this war is not only about oil. Venezuela under Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro has always been eager to refine its oil in the refineries in Texas. The U.S. has made that impossible or difficult through sanctions. The U.S. regime has stolen Venezuela's largest foreign asset in the form of Citgo to starve it of assets, because the U.S. regime, and specifically neocons, Cuban Americans like Marco Rubio, see Venezuela as the engine of a kind of regional project that threatens U.S. hegemony and U.S. control in the Western Hemisphere. And what they ultimately would like to do is topple the government in Cuba as well, the government in Nicaragua, and to destroy the center left all across the subcontinent, including Lula da Silva in Brazil. They openly say this. So the drug war is just cover for a larger regional project under the auspices of the Monroe Doctrine, but it really represents a complete misinterpretation of the Monroe Doctrine, which was enshrined in order at a time when the U.S. was not even one of the great powers in the world, to keep the British and other major colonial powers out of Latin America. There is no threat of.
Yeah, and Max is exactly right about this. Historically, that was what the Monroe Doctrine was designed to do, was actually keep the United States out of wars in Europe, and at the same time to proactively discourage colonial powers in Europe from colonizing South America at the same time, when America wasn't fighting all these absurd empire-building, hegemony-creating absurdities throughout the world. Regime change operations, random military strikes, throwing our weight around as if we are the world police. And yeah, I think this even goes beyond regional hegemony for the reasons I stated earlier, and also because of the person they want to replace Maduro. And guess who that is? That's Maria Machado, the recipient of the Nobel Prize Award in absurdity, of course, who just coincidentally happens to be a very stern supporter of Israel and Netanyahu, tweeting her love for Israel, her closeness toward Israel, and doubling down, it seems, on the genocide in Israel, a personal friend of Netanyahu herself. And if that's not enough, we have the fact that she has praised Israel and said, in fact, that the struggle of Venezuela is the struggle of Israel. So this is the game. It's not just about South America regional hegemony. It's about Middle Eastern regional hegemony, as it so often is with American foreign policy. They just give the game away too easy when Israel just comes first above everything. So this is a way to link Rubio's neocon desires for the elimination of the Bolivarian regime with adherence toward Israel, something that this administration mixes into virtually every single policy it ever pursues on the foreign policy stage.
Another country moving into Latin America, and the idea that China poses this great threat through some kind of infrastructure cooperation deals in South American countries really underlines the intellectual bankruptcy of this entire Monroeist policy, because it's delusional.
If you go to the website, Colonel McGregor just pointed this out, if you go to the website of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Donald Trump's Drug Enforcement Administration, and look up Venezuela, there's no significant, even detectable drug trafficking from Venezuela to the United States. And yet the government has attempted to perpetrate this deception on the American people to the point where it is committing war crimes by killing civilians, non-combatant civilians on the high seas, and even, as we know from the controversy of this week, murdering rather than rescuing survivors that it tried to and failed.
That's exactly what it's doing. The whole drug trafficking thing, narco-terrorism, that's just a propaganda scheme to try to justify this, because Americans don't want to justify this. No one voted for Trump on the basis that he'd bring us a new regime change war, especially one in Venezuela, which wasn't even floated. This is a scheme to try to propagandize Americans that is false. Fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela. Cocaine doesn't come from Venezuela. And here you have these war crimes committed in ways that are just totally absurd. These boats can't even arrive in the United States. They don't have enough fuel to go that far. They'd have to refuel. And the Coast Guard, their typical policy is to just wait till these boats come to port, search them, and if there are drugs, then they charge the culprits at that time. This is just illegitimate killing for the sake of killing, to drum up war fervor and to try to convince Americans to support this monstrosity.
To kill.
Yeah, that's the strike on December 2nd, the one we know about, where survivors were ordered killed by the admiral in charge of Operation Southern Spear. And this is consistent with, but it was a verbal order from Pete Hegseth. And this is consistent with Pete Hegseth's attempt to eliminate the rules of engagement, basically to what he calls untie the hands of the soldiers and increase lethality. He boasted in the book that he released last year that a unit under his control in Iraq, that he instructed them to ignore army rules of engagement and to kill at will. Just a quick correction. The strike that I mentioned was September 2nd, not December 2nd.
Correct.
So the generals are all going to have to take the fall for Pete Hegseth's lawlessness today. They're going to be the fall guys for Hegseth.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that unfolds with Hegseth and some rumors that they want to replace him, or at least parts of this administration want to replace him. And Max is totally right. Hegseth did boast about that in regard to Iraq in his book, telling his forces, violate the rules of engagement. If it means success, if it means killing, if it means, overarching victory, let's ignore the rules of engagement. He did the same thing just the other day at a press conference, saying that he told our warriors to just ignore the rules of engagement when it came to Venezuela. Well, at least he's telling us the truth. And in some way, I actually respect that more than just being so absurd in your lies, in saying that, this is all conducive under the Constitution, under our policy, under a just system of international ethics, that you're actually going to say, no, we're going to ignore the rules of engagement. I think that's evil and callous, but at least he's telling us the truth in that regard. So we'll have to see how this goes. They definitely want regime change, just for some of the same reasons they always have: regional hegemony, to further the Israel alliance with the United States through Machado, who they want to replace Maduro with, and to further this stupid empire building scheme that never pays dividends for Americans. When's the last time a regime change effort led to a better situation for America? It simply doesn't. In Libya, you had slave trading and weapons scattered throughout sub-Saharan Africa. In Syria, you have the Al-Qaeda affiliate creator now in control of the country, al-Shara. With Iraq, you had 1 million people dead, thousands of U.S. soldiers dead, many of them offing themselves once they came home. Trillions of dollars of debt in the war on terror between that and Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq, and now we have this Iran strike. 38 trillion in debt, and this is what we're focused on instead of internal affairs, which you'd think would be part of an America First administration, but it's not like we exactly get that under the thumb of Donald Trump in the United States, do we? No. He used the non-interventionist foreign policy rhetoric as exactly that, rhetoric with no follow-through. It was an electoral vehicle without any semblance of being willing to deliver that to the public. So Liz Cheney still reigns within this administration, as it always will. The ghost of Dick Cheney does too. That's what happens when you appoint Marco Rubio and Mike Walls and Mike Huckabee and people like that in charge of your administration. Exactly these types of things. Pete Hegseth as well. But what do you guys think? Do you think Max is right about this? What really is the motives behind this? Is it BRICS? Is it Israel? Is it a combination of things? We know it's not the drugs. That's just the propaganda scheme and outlet. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks, Max. Great coverage. He's done an amazing job following this story and reporting on it. And also follow Judge Napolitano. He's awesome too. Great segment. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like this take in my video, please consider joining as a YouTube member by clicking the join button below. And if you do that, you'll get immediate access to all my videos before they go live to the general public. You'll be able to see those members only videos immediately then. Also, if you like this video, please consider clicking the link down below for a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic. You can click that link, go to the site, put in your email. I'll send that to you free of charge, no obligation, no cost whatsoever, just because you're awesome. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.